Okay, how about we have a little discussion below? I did make some comments before about rebuttal to some other team of YouTube videographers that were making some erroneous statements about crop versus full frame. But I did make 4 hard-hitting videos about pixel pitch and why, for example, a bird photographer with a $20,000 lens is using a crop sensor camera, especially like the D7100 and a couple of others, since the pixel pitch is so great, because there's more raw informational data to be saved per square millimeter, especially when you're cropping the hell out of long-distance bird and animal shots. But I was not stating, nor did I make the inference that in general crop sensor cameras are better. Obviously, of course, there are advantages of the full frame sensors, nowhere near as many as there were 8 years ago. 8 years ago, you could say, hey, you get a full frame digital sensor, and that's it. When you get the money, and you'll upgrade from a crop sensor, and that premise doesn't really exist anymore. It does in a very few criteria. Those criteria are important, like depth of field. It is the case if someone, for example, shoots an 85 millimeter lens with backlit, you've got incredible bokeh. So if you shoot the equivalent of 85 millimeter on a crop sensor camera, which would be 56 millimeter, right about thereabouts, like for example this Fuji, obviously your bokeh balls, bokeh balls. You heard me say bokeh balls. Your your creamy bokeh balls. And that sounds a little bit sexual, doesn't it? Your bokeh balls are not as big and they're not as stunning, but that is sheerly due to magnification. If you zoom out with your feet and you take the exact same projection on the back of the sensor with, say, the person and the backlight in a night shot, and you slap that 85 millimeter onto the Fuji or a crop sensor, Nikon, etc., it's going to be the same. Okay, so it's merely a matter of magnification. It's like, well, equivalent 85 millimeter with a crop sensor, which is basically an 85 millimeter and full frame equivalent, I don't get that creamy backdrop that I get for like cityscapes and whatnot. It's just not as good. Well, that's the case, but that has nothing to do with the camera, because this is only an angle of interception. Okay, it is a matter of magnification. Like I told you, lenses don't give a damn what sensor's underneath. They all crap out the same light. Okay, get it? Get it? Get it? Get it? Get it? Yeah. Okay. Okay. So the notion that your depth of field is different on a crop sensor versus a full frame is bull crap. Is only a matter of magnification. You stick that 85 millimeter that's sitting on your Nikon D4S and you slap it on here using a converter, of course, or the equivalent of 85 millimeter that's the exact same quality. Say that Fuji had an 85 millimeter for whatever reason, which they don't. You throw that same lens on there, it will look the same. It's only a matter of magnification. The bokeh balls will look the same. Is this my belief, conviction, or opinion? No, it's hardcore fact. So the depth of field argument is there and real, but not really, okay? So if you zoom with your feet, you got the same magnification, you got no difference. It is the case that even with significantly improved SNR firmware, now the difference is very negligible. There is still better high ISO performance on full frame, but it ain't much. It ain't much. Larger photo size, better high ISO gain, okay? However, that has been now also too, most of you people are not shooting in really low light club scenes and whatnot, so that isn't it. If you give decent exposure, and by decent I mean you're not shooting a well digger's ass crack at 3 in the morning at the bottom of a well, and you say, well, the D4S has got better high ISO performance than that Fuji does. Well, yeah, you're right, but how often are you doing that? Well, if you're doing that, then you need it. But the difference doesn't really exist there anymore. That is why everything is going to not large photo sites, but going to small DX pixel density, pixel pitches on the sensors. Like the current, I think it's 4.14 micrometers on the Nikon 5D, the 50.1 megapixel camera that Canon just rolled out a few months ago. Canon's going that way. Everybody's going that way. The advantage of large photo sites, it's not the sensor, okay, that's actually got better high ISO performance. It is the pixel pitch and the size of the photo sites, because you could turn this thing into the same high ISO performance if it were, like, say, an 11 megapixel sensor with large photo sites. But nobody would buy that, and Fuji knows it, and Sony knows it, and Nikon and Canon, they all know it, okay? The DX, you don't want that. That's not a selling point that you can sell your cameras off of. So it's also still not the sensor size. It is, so the notion that you have better high ISO performance on full frame versus crop is also half true, but half BS. It's not size of the sensor, it is pixel pitch. The one real advantage, and basically the only real advantage that exists between full frame and DX, is lenses. Like if you got a nice wide zoom that just produces, you got a 10 to 24 or 12 to 24, like the Tamron 15 to 30. You throw it on a crop sensor, and, the awesomeness of that lens has been cropped. Okay? The stunning vistas of the 15 millimeter at full frame, angle of interception versus the same 15 millimeters, which is equivalent to about 21 millimeters, angle of interception, which has been cropped, castrated, circumcised. That is the real bummer, and it's not really that much of a bummer, but it is a bummer, especially if you got a lot of full frame lenses. On primes, it's not a big deal. You choose the appropriate prime, especially in wides on a DX. So that's the only real bummer. And it's not that big of a bummer, but it kind of is, especially if you got a crap load of full frame lenses. But that's the real pisser or bummer between full frame and crop sensor. Okay, that's really the only one. So I told you that the depth of field stuff is mostly BS. It only has to do with magnification, and the better high ISO performance has nothing to do with full frame versus crop. It has to do with pixel pitch. So you can have a discussion below about any further little advantages or disadvantages, and let's have that talk. But 2 of the 3 real advantages of full frame over crop sensor are not real in the absolutist sense. So the depth of field can be overcome, and the high ISO performance can be overcome. However, nobody produces large photo sites in APS-C crop sensor. But it's still not a factor of the crop sensor itself. Okay, get it? Got it? Good.